Daniel, congrats on 4,000 Days. I really enjoyed the film. As you say in the documentary, you were a Sigma Phi Epsilon member at WVU. What got you interested in this topic of hazing and to really amplify these voices that were so instrumental in getting this bill passed?
So as you said, I went to WVU, and I actually had a great experience in college there. I was on the football team. I was a SIGAP at the time. SIGAP there was the largest fraternity on campus, and we did stupid stuff. I was in college, and I admit I was hazed and I hazed others, but nothing like what's happening now. We didn't light people on fire. We didn't hook a car battery up to their nuts. We didn't hit people with cars or force people to chug bottles of whiskey. I was kind of shocked. I partnered with the university. We had a death at West Virginia in 2014, a boy named Nolan Birch. And I first learned about it a couple years after when there was a Dateline done on it. And I remember watching the Dateline and it didn't sit well with me. So I called Gordon Gee up, who's the president of the university, he's a friend of mine. I wanted to meet with him. And I went and met with Gordon and we came up with this idea to make an educational film, really to help the university, but it was really out there to educate kids so we can maybe help stop this and help people know there's bystander awareness laws. There's all sorts of ways to try to say no. So we set out to make a film more for the kids to hopefully help put an end to this. And I did that film. It went viral. We won an Emmy, and then next thing you know, other families started calling me saying my son was killed too. And I'm like, so I started doing more educational films. They all did well. But then one day I woke up and it was really right around the time of the pandemic. I was working on a six-part series where it was going to be more shock and awe, and it was going to be about the evolution of hazing. Because at that point I was more angry and I wanted to like put an end to this. But the pandemic hit, all of my concerts got shut down. I couldn't do music films, and I went off the deep end. I went down the rabbit hole of this, and I started realizing all the cover-ups, all the money and power behind this, and why the system's not changing, and the stubbornness of the system. And I felt like someone like me had to stand up and be the voice because there's a saying, you can't bullshit a bullshitter. I was once one of them. They can't sit here and look me in the eye and say they don't know. I know they know. I know the Nationals are more aware of what's going on. I know they can do more. They know they can do more. So I felt like I need to come out and give these families a voice and I need to put a spotlight on this. And I'm also from New Jersey, so I'm a kind of no BS guy. And as I started getting more involved in this and started knowing more families that lost their sons, I got pissed. And I want the world to know what's really happening here. And then more importantly, I want the world to know what heroes these families are because if my son died, I don't know if I could go out and talk about it every day. And they took their grief and they went out there in the midst of it, especially the Oaks. They were in the early stages of losing Adam, and they're out there every day reliving the worst day of their life, all to try to save other people's lives. And that's really admirable. And I felt like I needed to show the world what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a crazy launching pad because you look into this. Like I didn't know hazing had been going on since like the 1800s. Like,
Yeah.
y-
We
do
were actually went to the scene of the very first Hazen death, Mortimer Leggett in at Cornell. And so
I was curious. You mentioned this briefly in the film, but do you feel like social media is kind of amplifying and making maybe not just hazing, but kind of dangerous behavior within these frats, where it got worse because of social media?
100%. I mean, social media, the peer pressures of social media is very real. And the other thing we're seeing that's crazy is that fraternities, they're trying to one up each other. And, you know, it's not even against the law in like seven states to haze, but it's not a felony in most states. And so kids are posting themselves being hazed or hazing others, and they're all trying to one up each other on Instagram and on TikTok and on Yik Yak and all these places, and people joke about it, and then they all try to one up each other. And so social media is 100% driving this. And of course, the metas of the world won't do anything to try to curb it, because a lot of people see Hazen as either harmless because we over the years we just kind of the way Hazen is kind of glorified in movies like Animal House and Old School. It's like all fun and games, right? And most people think that's what it is. And they don't realize that it's morphed from, streaking through the quad to let me hit you with a car. And when I learned that, I was so shocked what's going on today that I really thought, oh my God, we have to let the world know because some of the stories and some of the videos that have been sent to us, that's going to my other project, my six-part series, where I just have the most startling videos you've ever seen. If people really knew what's really happening, they would be with pitchforks outside trying to shut down the fraternity system. It is just shocking. And all of these nationals know what's going on, and they don't really do a damn thing about it.
Yeah, that sounds insane. And there are two scenes in your film, and the contrast between them really stood out to me, where the parents visit the locations where their sons died. One was still a frat, and you take a shot of, all the alcohol being proudly displayed there. And then the other was turned.
It's not a frat. That was actually an off-campus apartment.
Okay.
Uh, that was the annex house for Delta Chi when Adam Oaks was there. But no, the students still live there, but it wasn't a frat anymore.
Okay, my
Uh,
apologies. And the other
yeah.
was like turned into a musical center, and I thought that was just very interesting to see those locations where one was very much like embracing change and was really turned into something positive, and the other, even if it
Uh,
wasn't a
we we
frat, it
act-
seemed
we
like,
actually we actually went to the scene where Nolan Birch died too, but we weren't allowed in, so it didn't make it in this cut. It's going to go on my other film, but that's still a frat house at WVU. Yeah, the Versleys going back to Ryder, that was really interesting because Julie put that day off for years, and they were kind of scared to go. Like I think Gary wanted to know, he wanted to go to the place. The parents, I don't. This is a because I don't know what I would do, but I think most of them for closure they want to go to the place where their kid died. But the diversity struggled with that decision for years, and I kind of talked them into doing it, and they were dreading it. I know they were nervous, and to all of our shock, we walked in, and it was this place full of joy and music and love, and it was very healing for them. Now, Eric, it may have been healing, but it was definitely traumatizing. That was a pretty that was the first time I ever experienced anything like that. I mean, I was standing right behind them, but going to a place where their son died with the father. Oh my God. Just heartbreaking being there. And yeah, I mean, and the crazy thing about that was at the time we went there, we didn't have access to the body cam footage yet or crime scene photos. So Eric wasn't even sure where Adam died. And weirdly enough, we found out later when we were looking at the body cam footage, but he walked in where Adam was found dead and he said it must have been right around here. He felt Adam, which was crazy that he's in this room and he was standing on the very spot where Adam died. And at the time, we didn't know it. So
that is
that sent chills down.
incredible.
When we saw the on the in the edit bay when we were watching the body cam footage, we were like, oh my God. Yeah, just that made it real for me. Those were tough moments. That and I visited all the boys' graves with all three parents. That was tough to do as well. You don't know what to say. And
Yeah.
just, and then you get even more angry because as you're doing this and you realize that this isn't a hard thing to fix, and all these nationals just turn a blind eye to this stuff. And it shows in the film, there's a scene where Julie Diversity tells Lisa Macbeth, since we've been back, we brought other parents, like had their bill been passed the last time they were there, Adam Oakes would probably still be alive because Eric did do research on fraternities and there would have been transparency. He would have saw what was going on with Delta Chi at DCU. And instead, he didn't know, so his son joined. They were suspended the year before. And if he saw that, he would not have let Adam join. So Adam would still be alive today if that transparency law was in effect. And so,
It's heartbreaking stuff.
uh,
Like,
Debbie,
this film was really powerful. I teared up multiple times watching it, and I did want to ask you at the very beginning of the film, there's a disclosure of using AI to make some pictures move, and it mentioned that it was cleared by the family. But I didn't notice, it might be in more than I noticed, but it didn't seem like it was used very much. Do you think that's more
it's
effective?
it was only
Oh,
used twice. We had it in four times. We removed it on the other, but just because even if you use it once, people are so touchy about it now. We want to put a disclosure out there. We did it.
yeah,
There's a picture of Adam Oakes where you said he has actually the WVU sweatshirt on, but he just kind of moves and smiles. And then there's another scene at West Virginia with Nolan Birch when he's in his room, and you see his hands move, and he kind of animated. Those are the only two things that we animated. Um,
Yeah, I was just curious. Like the Steven Soderbergh John Lennon doc just premiered at Cannes, and the discussion of that wasn't the doc. It was all about AI usage in it. Like, do you fear that it might take something away from it when it's such a minor part?
No, because we sent those to the families, and Kim Birch in particular, like cried. She's like, "That's exactly the way my son moved." And because I felt it was necessary to have something on Nolan, especially because they didn't have like he died just as the iPhones are really taking off, so they didn't have a lot of video of him. I only had kind of grainy still photos, and had seen his mannerism and stuff. Because he was kind of like goofy, always fooled around. When I saw the mother's reaction to it, and she wanted to use because she felt like we can connect more with the character, and so, but we would never do it in a way where it doesn't feel authentic, or never in a way to try to change the storyline or whatever. That's where I kind of draw the line. Like I would never be involved in anything that uses AI to tell stories or whatever. That's why we used animation. I mean, we could have went the AI route and done reenactments with AI, but I would never do that. I just feel it
Yeah,
doesn't feel authentic.
it
And
seems
so
very tastefully done, and I'm glad you gave the extra
I
context
just
that
wanted
we
it
can.
was just a quick little movement on photo. That was it. So
Yeah, yeah, it was very minor, so I was just curious why it was still included. Thank you so much for your time, Daniel, and congrats on the documentary. I really
thank you.
resonated.